So, here we are on Mother's Day, and what a creative act, what a creative force the universe has to bring forth new life. And so we are living our spiritual values, we're exploring imagination, because that's where new ideas are birthed, is through the imagination, because knowledge is about what already is, but imagination is about what could be. It's about focusing on what could be. And our book, as Gracie mentioned, is Creative Confidence by Tom and David Kelly, who have a firm called IDEO, where they help people to get more creative. And they also have a school at Stanford University called the D School, D.School, where they also teach students there and corporate executives how to get more creative. So there is a Stanford psychologist, his name is Albert Bandura. He's 87 years old and he's still practicing at Stanford. And his specialty is helping people overcome phobias. So we're talking about going from fear to courage. And so they start out with a story about a woman who is terrified of snakes. And so what he does is, the first thing he does is say, there is a man in the next room with a snake, and you're going to touch the snake. And she's like hell, I'm going to touch this snake. No way. So what he does is he takes baby steps, just little incremental steps. Like she puts on a hockey mask and leather gloves. Okay, and then they open a one-way mirror, so she can look into the other room, and sure enough, there is a man there with a boa constrictor draped around his neck. And so the psychologist asks her, well, what do you think the snake is going to do? And she said, he's going to curl around this guy's neck and choke him to death. And he said, okay, let's watch. And of course, the snake just lays there. La, 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 la. Snake is just minding his own business, hanging out, literally. And so she watches, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. So then he opens the door to the room. And so he asks her to stand in the doorway to the room. And sometimes the patients ask, he has to go stand in the doorway with them. So he stands in the doorway with her. And then incrementally, they just take little baby steps closer to the snake. And eventually, she takes off the hockey mask. And nothing happens. And she takes off the gloves, and nothing happens. And eventually, she touches the snake. And she just gets to feel the texture of that snake. And it doesn't do anything, it's just there. And all of a sudden, her phobia is gone. Her phobia is gone, and it's gone forever. The phobia is gone. And not only is it gone, but later, a few weeks, he calls her a few months later to see how she's doing, and no, that fear is absolutely gone. And in fact, she had a dream about the snake helping her wash the dishes. So the other thing about this is that people who have successfully overcome these phobias become more brave about everything. He calls this guided mastery. Guided mastery, where it's the power of the first-hand experiences destroying false beliefs. First-hand experiences destroying false beliefs. Because we've all got some beliefs that we think are absolutely the truth, and guess what? They may not be. But we can't just give them up. They're ours. We got them through our family or through our culture or something, and we don't want to let them go because we know that they're true, because Mom told me it's true. So the only way to say that that's not true is to somehow come step by step to a first-hand experience that shows that it's not true. Now, as I said, people who do this become braver. They take up horseback riding. They take up public speaking. They do creative things in their jobs. They take on tougher challenges. They persevere longer, and they are more resilient when things go wrong. I remember the first time I walked on fire, which we'll talk about failure in a minute, but anyway. It was at a women's retreat in the mountains, and we did this whole thing where we got into a whole, ritual where we, danced by the moon, and we lit the fire, and we danced by the fire, and did all these things, and then they laid out the coals, and we walked the fire. And even though I did burn my feet, because I did it from a place of ego, not from a place of surrender, which I figured out later. We always, if we can, learn from our mistakes, but I'll go more into that. But after I did that, the following summer I was hiking in the mountains, and we hiked up to a lake, and there was a river that if you took the river, it went over a ledge into a pool. And previously, I would not have done that. But because I had walked on fire and I had survived, I did it. I went down the river and over the ledge and plunged into the ice-cold waters of the pool. And it was amazing. It was thrilling. It was like, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. So this is called self-efficacy, which is a series of small successes that lead to creative confidence. A series of small successes that lead to creative confidence. Now, the thing that gets in the way of our creativity the most, is fear of failure. So when I did that walk, I burned my feet. I didn't even realize that I had, actually. I walked over the coals. I stood there for another hour and a half while other people walked over the coals. And then I went to put on my shoes and thought, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Because I had been standing on wet grass and didn't feel the blisters forming on my feet. But I went back to my room. They had aloe vera for everybody. So I washed my feet thoroughly. I put the aloe vera on. I put clean socks on. I took some Advil. And then I went to bed, and I treated like a son of a gun. I said, because I was supposed to do a 60-mile walk 2 weeks later from one of the breast cancer walks from Santa Barbara to Malibu. So I did that. I prayed. I said, all right, Spirit, I know that you have shown me your power previously when I got rid of my anxiety attacks and, this little thing happened, this little thing happened, this little thing happened. Well, now these feet, this is an out picturing that's physical. I really want this healed. I am making a demand on the universe that this be healed. And so I went to sleep that night. I woke up in the morning, and I had one little black spot on one foot, and that was it. It was gone. I did the walk. I got blisters for another reason. But You know, I had an opportunity to build my faith through a small series of successful opportunities to do so. To use prayer with various things in my life, building up my faith, building up my faith, building up my faith, until, boom, I could really, with heart and soul and mind, allow that healing to happen. We think creative geniuses just, did it. Wrong. Creative geniuses fail a lot. They just try more than everybody else. I love this quote from Winston Churchill. He said, "Success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm." To go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. In other words, when Edison wanted to invent that light bulb, he just, knew that every experiment that failed told him something about something that didn't work. So he got to try something else. So it was just, okay, that ain't it. Let's go on. Let's try this. Let's try that. And keep trying and trying and trying with a knowing that if you tried hard enough, long enough, success would come. Mozart, same thing. Darwin, same thing. They just kept failing their way to success. And a lot of people do this. As the Kelly brothers say, Tom and David, who wrote this book, failure sucks but instructs. Failure sucks but instructs. So they also say when they're teaching their students, they say that the personal resilience, courage, and humility born of a healthy failure form a priceless piece of their educational growth. Form a priceless piece of their educational growth. So that fear of failure is something that we have to work through. And they talked about a man named John Cassidy, who wrote a book called Juggling for the Complete Klutz. And the first thing he does with his students is he has them throw the 3 balls up in the air and let them drop. Because what's the big fear of a juggler? The ball drops. Well, you throw it up in the air and it drops. You get over that. Just throw it up in the air and it drops. Okay, big deal. And then he starts from there. Failure's okay. It's a way we learn. It's the way we start. They also talked about gaming culture and how gaming culture is actually building creative confidence, because the gamers have this experience of what Jane McGonigal, who is a game designer and a futurist and an author, calls urgent optimism. Urgent optimism. So what they do is they desire to act immediately to tackle an obstacle, motivated by the belief that you have a reasonable hope of success. So in other words, they do not get discouraged by the fact that they fell down in that thing and they got shot or whatever it was. And then they keep going. They keep going, okay, now I know to avoid that. Now I can get this. Now I know I can get this helper to help me through this passageway and this thing. And they go through all these labyrinths and they do all this stuff and they go from level to level. And they just try everything. They fail and then they keep going and then they fail and they keep going again. They've learned some more, they've learned some more, they've learned some more. So they're building up this habit of overcoming failure and becoming more successful, becoming more resilient. We see toddlers do this when they're learning to walk. They fall on their butt, hit that little diaper, and then they get right back up again. They just know that they can be successful. Same thing with, I was with my friend and her grandchild, And she was trying to put her sweater on herself, and she was having a terrible time. And so I said, I was going to help her. And it was like, no, I want to learn to do this. I'm going to figure this out, even if it's twisted and I can't figure out where the arm is. I'm going to let me do this. All right. Do this. You go, girl. All right. So the Kelly brothers were very fortunate because they grew up in a family that was fearless. When they had the washer break, they did not call the washer repairman. They fixed it themselves. So they fixed stuff. And if you got a bicycle for Christmas or for your birthday, and 2 days later you decided to sandblast it and paint it neon green, that was fine. That was fine. They allowed you artistic license. They also encouraged you to figure stuff out. So he and his brother took the family piano apart. They never did figure out how to put it back together. And in fact, David has some of the insides of the piano as a piece on his wall to talk about, sometimes you fail and it's okay. You learn what you can or you can't do. When I was a programmer, I had gone through my training and I'd written this program and I'd run the data through the program and it came out perfect. So they said, okay, well, we think you're ready to do something in the real life, so here's a fix we need you to put in. So I put in this fix, and I tested that it worked appropriately, that it was working, doing what they told me they wanted it to do. So I put it in, and immediately we got calls from all over California, because it was all of Northern California that was impacted. And they said, you stopped this other thing from working, which I didn't even know had been impacted by what I did. So I had to go down and talk to the woman who ran the computer room to ask her to stop everything and back out my fix, which means we had to bring all of Northern California down. We're talking Pacific Telephone. We had to bring not everybody's service, but the service that allowed people to order broadband cable and things like that. So we had to bring it down for an hour. And she was a formidable woman. She was very tall and robust and scary. And so I had to go down and stand in front of her and say, back out there. And so she did. So she did because she had to, because it wasn't working. And but that was a valuable lesson. It sucked, but it instructed. It said to me, okay, I have to get some users up here and have them bang on this fix before I ever install it, because I don't know enough to test the whole process. I only knew to test what I had fixed. I didn't realize I had unfixed something else. And I see this still happening in software releases that we get every day, right? The notifications process in my phone goes on and off regularly. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and all the settings are the same. And sometimes I'm notified, sometimes I'm not. So somebody's made a little change and didn't realize it was going to turn off notifications for some people who use some stuff sometimes. So who knows? They talk about this thing called Bessemer Venture Partners. They're a very, very successful financial investment firm, but they had an opportunity to invest in the Series A release of stock for PayPal, and they didn't take it. And 3 years later, it sold for $1.5 billion. This guy also lived down the street from Larry Page and Sergey Brin, who started Google. They were working in a friend's garage, and he was visiting the friend, and she said, I want to introduce you to these two really smart Stanford students who are writing a search engine in my garage. And his response was, how can I get out of this house without going anywhere near the garage? So they missed out on investing in Google. But they have been successful investing other places. But the thing is, they don't hide their failures. They don't say, we never make mistakes, it must have been the market downturn, blah, blah, blah. They take responsibility for saying, yeah, we screwed up. We should have invested in it, and we didn't. But we did invest in this, and we didn't invest in that, and we did make money for our investors. So, if overall you make money for your investors, well, that's the bottom line. They all were talking to Jan Wenner, who is the founder and publisher of Rolling Stone, which is 50 years old this year. And they were talking about some of the failures that they have had. And one of the failures was the University of Virginia rape scandal, and which they had published and turned out to be erroneous information. And so what they did was they hired Columbia University to study their process to see what they'd done wrong, and then they published that in the magazine. Say, here, we screwed up, and this is how we screwed up. Because if we don't make our failures instructional, then we haven't learned from them. And if we haven't learned from them, guess what happens? We get to repeat them. Exactly. We get to do them all over again. So we're very, very, we're encouraged not to let fear stop us, the fear of failure stop us. To know that if we blow it, we will learn from it and we will move on. We had this big fundraiser with Sandra Joseph, which was a wonderful activity. Everybody who came really enjoyed it. And we had hoped to make a lot of money from it, and we did not. I don't think we broke even. I don't know what the final figures are because we haven't seen the latest since we got the deposit from Brown Paper Tickets, but we didn't make money. But we learned a lot. We learned a lot. And we also became much better known in the community. We were on the radio, we were on KNCO, we were on KVMR, we were in the Prospector. So a lot of people in that audience that I saw the pictures of, I did not have any clue who they were. So new people came to that event and learned a little something about us. So we learned things. I remember it also, I was thinking about, creative moms. And I remembered this mom when I was working in LA as a representative reservations rep for an airline. And there was a mom there, and she had this daughter who was turning 1 year old. So she spent, the afternoon baking this beautiful cake. And then she sat the cake in front of her 1 year old daughter, and everybody sang happy birthday. And then she let her daughter stick both her hands in the cake and just play with the cake. It was her cake, and she could do whatever she wanted with it. So she was just, giving her daughter the creative license to do what pleased her on her birthday with her cake. So, it's like, all right. How wonderful is that? How wonderful is that? We had a wonderful retreat these last 2 days. And what these gentlemen say, who wrote this book, they say, vulnerability and the ability to trust the people around you can help to overcome so many of the barriers to creative thinking and constructive behavior. When we have a retreat, what we do is we create that environment of trust and vulnerability. And when we do, amazing and creative things happen. It really is a life-expanding experience. An experience of just being able to share wholeheartedly with people about things that really matter. So it's a wonderful thing. And the other thing that really kills creativity is comparison. Thinking, oh, am I as good as that? That, can I, I have to conform to this. I have to do it this way. I have to, make it look like that. No. We have to be our unique selves. We cannot do our creative thing worrying about whether somebody else is judging us. We have to let that go. And that's what's amazing about these retreats is everybody's thing is unique. Just amazing, different experiences of what shows up. Which reminds me, if you went to the retreat, what was left, I have a hoodie that was left, and somebody's vision board was left. So if you left your vision board, I have it. If you left your hoodie, I have that too. Because we get in an altered state, Ernest Holmes says, our impulse to create comes from the original creative spirit, which is in, around, and through us. The urge to live creatively comes from the urge of the divine imagination, which pushes itself out through us into self-expression. This is our nature. So we just allow that divine imagination to come through us as our individual self-expression. So our affirmation for today is, I accept divine assistance to overcome my fears. 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 And so it is.